Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this week's episode of the Market Monday Recap, where I recap the popular video series that I do over at my main channel called the Market Monday. This week we talked about the Challenger decks. As many of you may know, I'm not a fan of the Challenger decks from more of a gamer's standpoint or a shop owner standpoint rather than as an investment standpoint. Usually these are good products to pick out some cards that get crushed by the reprint, and then you have the opportunity to invest in them. I'm still looking very closely at Challenger Decks 2018. However, this Challenger Deck Series 2019 seems a little bit better for cards that are actually investable because there are a lot more of cards that are actually played in other formats like Commander and Modern, and there are many cards that actually do survive rotation. Last time around in 2018 Challenger decks, there were very, very few cards that survived post-rotation or had Modern playability. So this time around, I do think they're better in that aspect. The community reception of these is much worse. I think it mainly has to do with, we know that the supply was really, really great last time around, and that was kind of the unknown last time around. So the decks held their price, or at least the contents of the decks held their price pretty stubbornly for even a month or two after the decks were released, and then we had the inevitable crash. This time around, I think that the crash happened as soon as the cards were spoiled, and even though these aren't in the hands of anyone yet, the contents have continued to just get crushed. So let's talk about that crushed. Whenever something is crushed by a reprint, there always is a good opportunity to invest in these cards. So this is a top 10 list of cards that I think are great investments for the Challenger Decks 2019. Not the current price they're at, but probably when they lose, I would say, between 75% to 80% of their value, inevitably due to the contents of these being more than the manufacturer, or not the manufacturer, more than the distributor price of what stores you'll be able to get these. You are going to have those TCG player sellers that are just going to dump the contents. They'll figure out it's easier to sell the contents than sell the sealed product, and especially when there's a card like Arclight Phoenix in that pays for that deck, and then they can just make up on the other cards by dumping as many possible on the market and letting the market absorb them. So these are 10 cards. When they do lose about 75 to 80% of their value that they currently have, I think are pretty good investments. So let's start off with my number 10. This is Wizard's Lightning. Wizard's Lightning is a pretty versatile card. I like this for two things. If we do have a format that does try to bridge between Modern and Standard, I think this is a pretty powerhouse in that format. It's that format's version of the best Lightning Bolt that we have. As this gets reduced by 2 if you have a wizard. There are some really good wizards, especially if the format starts back further. You have the Soulscar Mage and the Get You Lava Runner. And every set that comes out, this is a very, very easy creature type, especially in red or other color combinations, to reduce the cost of the Wizard's Lightning. So this is definitely not a card that you want to be picking up now. You can see that it had a nice little trajectory for a while, started to crash, and now really has crashed with the spoil of the Challenger decks. So this is probably a card that I would not invest until we knew when the flatline is going to occur, and I'm thinking it's me 25 cents. Let's just see what Card Kingdom is buying them at the moment. 10 cents a piece. So they are already setting the bar very, very low. So getting these in on at 10 cents a piece is probably pretty good. I think that's kind of the bottom of these cards, and then they will go up. Pretty good spec card, pretty good anticipating that something will get printed for Modern to actually push this over the edge. Wizards is very, very close to being a tier deck. All right, on to my number 9. This is a card that survives rotation. This is Conclave Tribunal. Conclave Tribunal is going to get crushed down to about the 10-cent mark. Card Kingdom's only buying for 5 cents. And this card, if it sees any sort of domination like it did in the early days of Guilds of Ravnica, you got to think when a set rotates out, or when multiple sets rotate out for the set that is going to be coming in the fall, there's going to be a lot less cards to work in the card pool. And a card like Conclave Tribunal really, really shines. It is very versatile. It's seen play in a lot of different decks. Basically, if White Weenie is even somewhat viable, which I think it's even viable just from the Guilds of Ravnica white card pool, you even have the Ravnica Legions, things like the Tide Taker. Conclave Tribunal is going to see play in those particular decks. Yeah, it's going to hurt with some of the cards that are rotating, but I've always been very curious about this card being Modern playable. I actually think it is in some of the token variants. It's better than, in my opinion, running something like Oblivion Ring for those decks, but it could see some modern play. I would not be surprised if this card ever does break into it. And like I said before, this is another card that I think will be a powerhouse if we do get that in-between format. So this, I think, when it bottoms out, it's going to see play in Standard. Inevitably, it will start going back up, even though the supply of this is incredibly high. Speaking of another card like that, this is my number 7 with the Crackling Drake. Crackling Drake is currently going for $1. Card Kingdom's bumped it down to 50 cents. They're buying it for 6 cents a piece. Even though this will get a ton of supply back into the field, this is a modern card. It sees play in many modern decks. You can see here the Is It Phoenix deck in modern does play it. It's a powerhouse there. Even Legacy has played it before. Goryo's Phoenix. I've seen many lists with it. And I can't imagine a standard where Crackling Drake is not a powerhouse. I think that all of the pieces are there, like the Terramander is there, the Ralzarek, which gets better once Teferi rotates out. Niv Mizzet is still there. And so Crackling Drake will have a 4 of deck. Yes, there's 4 of in this deck, and yes, that will hamper the price, but if this goes down to the 10-cent mark or the 25-cent mark, I think that the demand from those decks, and once these decks do dry up out of their supply, we're going to see the Crackling Drake start to go back up. This is also a deck that I think is going to fly off the shelves just because of the Arclight Phoenix, and so people aren't going to be able to pick up a Challenger deck just for the Crackling Drakes within after rotation, because there won't be any of those left unless they somehow just reprint this one like they did with the Mindseize decks with Commander. These are gonna, I mean, it's gonna inject a lot more in the supply, but the option of having a complete deck won't be there for the people trying to build Crackling Drakes, and therefore they're gonna have to go to the secondary market to buy these. So I like getting in at like 10 cents, 15 cents, all the way to a quarter. I think is fine. I think you'll double up your money. I think buy lists will sometime, by the time this rotates, buy it for 50 cents to 75 cents, and it's a quick double up there with very little labor involved. All right, on to the next card. This is Experimental Frenzy. Experimental Frenzy is when it does inevitably crash in price. We're looking at the buy list price here, about 80 cents for Card Kingdom. 75 cents, I think, would be where this is going to flatline down. But this card is such a powerhouse, very versatile. You can see he's playing in even Legacy. Modern, he's playing Affinity. I've seen Commander decks play it before, so it's a powerful card. It will see play in some sort of deck post-rotation, and again, this is a good card to get in on. It was flatlining out before this reprint. Again, this is going to get crushed, but about that 75 cent mark I think is the right point to invest in. There's 2 of these per deck that get injected in, and yeah, it's the best one out of that deck for sure. On to the next one. This is a Commander spec. This is Eldest Reborn. This card got all the way up to $1, and this did have a lot of relevance because of Standard, but I think the Commander was also pushing the price of this card up. You can see tons of Standard decks were running it, a lot of them sideboards, but this is where I like it. It sees play in 2,000 decks, according to EDH Rec, and so that, according to like the Dominaria statistics, is one of the more played cards. You see it's in Muldrotha. A lot of the newer decks and older decks alike have put the Eldest Reborn in the decks. Popular commanders like Notha Guiltleaf or Liliana Heretic Healer, and like I said, newer decks, older decks, all have used the Eldest Reborn in their lists. So I think that if we're looking at buy lists, if Card Kingdom is still pretty bullish on this, paying 60 cents a piece for Eldest Reborn, these come in high quantities in the deck, the green-black deck. If this does bust down to all the way 25 cents, this is a good long-term spec for those Commander decks. And Commander's a format that is taking off right now. You'll have to wait and look at some of my videos that will come in the next few days, specifically talking about how Commander, the staples, are just absolutely crushing it right now. So again, this should go down a quarter. That's the time to pick up. Another Commander staple, Ravenous Chupacabra. We got the same thing going for it. Got all the way up to right around here, about the $1.50 mark. The buy lists were $1 at one point from Card Kingdom. Card Kingdom since decreased it down to about 50 cents. I think this card will get crushed a little bit more because I believe it's a 4 of in the deck. And you can see, though, that it does see a ton of play in EDH. Has had 2 printings and was still able to maintain that $1.50 mark. And 3,000 decks, plenty of decks run this in EDH. It's a great flicker target. Pairs with tons of cards like Alesha, Muldrotha, Marin. These are all extremely popular. Muldrotha, I think, eventually will take over Atraxa as the most popular commander of all time. That's just if you look at the numbers and look at the trajectory, that's what I think will happen. So I like this getting on at about a quarter on Ravenous Chupacabra. It's funny because that's when I got into Ravenous Chupacabra last time around at the height of Ixalan when we had a crash in the market. Even though it said it never went down to this mark, I was finding places to pick it up all day for about a quarter. All right, so on to the next one, which is another one that survives rotation, is Lava Coil. This card is going to get absolutely crushed. Card Kingdom's already paying $1.50 because it's in 2. And they're only paying 40 cents. I think this one could easily go down to about the 50-cent mark or below, and it's just going to have the exact same effect on the next standard as it did on this one. It's going to be the Premier Removal. It's a 2-mana spell that can get rid of any 4 toughness creature, and especially if anything like Rekindling Phoenix exists, there are plenty of them that are still in the format that need to be exiled. I think that Lava Coil is not going anywhere. It's going to be there's going to be very, very few cards that can push this out of its slot for the post rotation. So out of sight, out of mind after this thing gets printed into oblivion with the Challenger decks. Picking them up like a quarter anyway to 50 cents I think will be profitable. Buy list eventually will have these back up. At one point in time, I believe Card Kingdom was paying like $2. They're paying $2 for Lava Coil. So that's how much demand it had at one point, and now of course it's getting crushed. But it's because there's a lot of them being printed. I believe 2 of the decks have 4, or maybe, so is there 8 copies, or maybe it's 6 copies that get reprinted. So now onto the really good stuff. The first one here is Reclamation Sage. Reclamation Sage is a card that gets reprinted, then goes right back up. So this is the trajectory of M15. It got all the way up to about $1.50. It got reprinted in the core set, went down all the way down to 40 cents, was starting to go back up, and again will go right back down. So let's look at the one from the M19. Expect this to be printed in a lot of commander decks, maybe yearly, but I don't think yearly printing of Reclamation Sage, which I believe is a top 10 green card in Commander, is going to affect the price long term for these type of stuff. Like, what I'm trying to say is one commander deck per year is not going to be able to keep up with the supply. So unless it gets reprinted in another core set in the future, I think we're going to expect this to start having a pretty good trajectory, even though it's in the Challenger decks, the 2 of. Probably get in on 10-cent mark pretty good, and you'll find buy list for a quarter in the future, no problem. On to the next one is where it really starts getting juicy. This is Sulfur Falls. Card Game's already decreased their price of this to about $8. They're paying $4.50. So again, they're keeping it quite steady. I'm expecting that to go down even more. There's 3 of these in the Phoenix deck. The Phoenix deck is profitable because the Arclight Phoenix, these things will be sold at Walmart. People are going to scalp them immediately. Those particular ones. Sulfur Falls is not going to be able to hold the value like our Arclight Phoenix is. So we'll see a decrease in the Sulfur Falls, and that's the time to go all in on this card because it's already proven itself in Modern. It sees a ton of play in these Modern decks because Blue-Red seems to be the color combination that would rather have these type of lands rather than a lot of the fetch lands or the pain lands. This is the one that really just fits the bill. They do like the fast land, the shock lands, and this, and some of them don't even go for a high quantity of shock lands. They'd rather just use a fetch to get a basic, and because they're playing many times around Blood Moons, they want a lot of basics because they have Blood Moons themselves in many of these decks. And Sulfur Falls turning into a red after it's been used for a blue source isn't that bad. But most of these decks like Storm, they play 4 of. If we look at this Is It Phoenix deck, let's see how many Sulfur Falls. They're playing a 1 of in this one. I mean, it's an option in Storm, so maybe it is more of a mana base like this. But again, Sulfur Falls was really being increased due to it being very, very demanded in other formats besides Standard. So I do like this one when it does get inevitably crushed. You got to think about rotation too. So I think that the buy list is going to stay pretty aggressive here. This is something that I'd actually even wait for rotation, and after rotation, really, really start to pick this up. So it will go back up, I think, around the $5 mark within a year, just from Commander, just from Modern, and whatnot. Last but not least is Plaguecrafter. This survives the rotation, and I do believe it will see at least sideboard play. It's a great way to get rid of Planeswalkers. We have a Planeswalker set coming out, and lo and behold, though, look how much this sees play in Commander. This is a brand new set and it's the most played card from Guilds of Ravnica. If we come over here to sets and go to Guilds of Ravnica, you will see that it's Plaguecrafter that is coming out on top, and it's got quite a bit of lead over Beast Whisperer, which of course is a very good elf ball, tons of elf commander type cards. So Plaguecrafter, almost 2,400 decks, almost a 20% increase over its next one. And then even look at that Assassin's Trophy, another like 20% increase over it. Even if you look at Circuitous Route, sees what, like almost, well, not quite twice as much, but 40% more than the root, or circuitous route. Kevin can talk here. Playcrafter is a card that was starting to go up in value, even though it was from a recent set, all the way up to 99 cents at Card Kingdom and $1 at 1.2. Nope, got up to about 75 cents as well. So it's kind of hit its peak here and now is going to get crushed because of the challenger decks, but there's not a lot of these in the challenger decks. So for those reasons, with the rotation and with this card just being such a favorite in Commander, I think that this card will be the fastest to rebound. So if you're looking for something that is going to absolutely bottom out after the challenger deck comes out and you can hurry and quick and flip it within like a year, it's probably going to be Playcrafter. But long term, this also looks really, really good as EDH decks. It will probably start to get printed because I think they're going to prefer this one over the Merciless Executioner or the Fleshbag Marauder that do very similar things, because this is a lot more versatile. It's never a bad situation in Commander. So I'd expect like a Commander 2019, Commander 2020 reprint for Playcrafter. But again, it's not going to inject enough supply to actually stop this card from going up. So that's kind of my overview of cards. There are some goodies in challenger decks. Again, these are all nothing that you need to pull the trigger on quickly. These are when you can find good deals, you invest in them. There's a whole science to the MTG finance market, and some things you do need to pull the trigger. Some things you just need to just sit back and wait. It's kind of what I did with Ravenous Chupacabra last time around. When Conic Master or Masters 25 came out, you'd find sellers all the time for 25 cents. It wasn't something you could like, oh, there's pages and pages of it. It would be, oh, there's someone today that has them for 25 cents. Oh, wait a week. There's another person that put them up. That's kind of the game you're going to have to play the challenger decks. Wait till everything bottoms out. Wait till they really bottom out. Like there'll be one seller that has them even lower than, but none of them at that point will follow suit. They're not willing to go that low. Those are the ones you want to kind of pick off and pick them off slowly. Because again, you don't want to affect the market early when these have a lot of time to bottom out. If you're sitting there buying them out when they hit a certain value, you're gonna make it so it never goes all the way down. Something I've learned from my mistakes in the past. I've also had that sort of effect on the market not crashing as far as I should have let it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll be back to be sure if you haven't submitted your 2000 fantasy finance portfolio, definitely go and check that video out. Get that up by the 30th of March. It's going to be an interesting competition, or the 31st of March. As soon as April comes around, we're going to start reviewing everyone's picks. And hopefully we find some gems, some goodies. The Magic market is going crazy. If you did invest in anything in Modern and Commander, you're going to have a pretty good payday here in the next couple months. So kudos to you, and we'll do an audit too on all the picks that we've done on this channel come up shortly. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.